How's it going, guys? Dragonstar Production here, back with another What If video, except this time we're going to be blending of two of my favorite childhood shows, that being Batman and Dragon Ball, and putting them together to make the what if of what if Batman was in Dragon Ball. And if this is something you guys actually enjoy, please make sure you hit that like button, and also hit that subscribe button as well, not forgetting to hit the bell icon. Also, consider joining the Patreon, that way you can actually suggest your own what if. Also, you can do that through Discord, but it takes a lot longer a process through grinding through roles. However, it can be done like Shallot. So, if you guys want to be like him, either join the Discord, or if you guys want to be like Demon72, you guys can join the Patreon. So with that said, we're going to be getting into the video intro now. So we're actually going to be having to start with a bit of a backstory for the story to make sense, so we're going to be starting with a young Bruce Wayne, but mainly focusing on his parents, Martha and Thomas Wayne. These two were big shots in a classified program called the Court of Owls. However, the Red Ribbon Army, being under constant threat of the Owls, Commander Red decides to actually put a hit on with the best assassin on Earth, Mercenary Tao. The hit was actually to take out not just the two, Thomas and Martha Wayne, but to take out the entire Court of Owls. However, he wasn't able to get Thomas and Martha Wayne, not being there at the time, but Tao, never to leave a job undone, locates everyday patterns until actually striking in a dark alleyway with a tongue Martha is dropped. Bruce then grabs his mother, panicking, while Thomas is actually watching the surroundings when all sorts of sounds ends up going around him, when he ends up protecting his son at all costs, when a shoe comes nailing him in the head, killing him right then and there. Bruce was just a helpless child, no clue on what to do after this. But after this day, he was then forced to live with his brother Alfred, who was the closest thing that he had to family, until actually going out on his own, vowing to protect anyone who feels the danger, to feel the fear, or to feel the way that he felt that night. So on this day, Bruce would then start training his body, until eventually forcing himself to train with all the masters on Earth. Bruce every day starts to train his body, even building robots to fight, and eventually Bruce felt his progression wasn't improving fast enough, so like I said before, he wanted to research the greatest martial artist of Earth, and this is actually when he finds both Master Roshi and Master Shin. However, we'll actually have to cover his training with Master Roshi first. Bruce arrives on Roshi's island after using a jet ski. When asking if he was actually the legendary Master Roshi replies with yes, but wonders how this random person showed up at his home. But mostly important actually here is how he found his house. Bruce then would explain how he's done his research, finding his old student Gohan. Bruce then said that he would train under Gohan for a small amount of time, as he then finally would tell him the direction of Master Roshi's island. Bruce then also mentions how Gohan said to give Roshi a very fun, yet naughty magazine. As Roshi getting a magazine and hearing that Bruce had already trained with the student Gohan, Roshi accepts Bruce as his student. Bruce Wayne then proceeds to do the exact training that Goku and Krillin did in canon. However, without a tournament coming up, Roshi decides to test his student by creating a persona of Jackie Chun to actually ambush Bruce on the way home. Jackie Chun would then leap from the trees at Bruce Wayne. However, Bruce Wayne, not looking, would also expect this attack and would actually catch his fist, throwing him over his head, and actually would start to fight, as the two would then clash back and forth until Bruce actually would manages to get a double spin kick, smacking Chun right against the jaw. Chun then goes to stand up, but Bruce stomps on his chest, asking who the hell he was. Roshi not realizing the flashbacks and the PTSD that Bruce was having, Chun decides to actually use the ace up his sleeve and use the Kamehameha. However, Bruce takes the blast up at pretty close range, but Roshi's attack only knocks Bruce back. Bruce then dashes pretty damaged, but at full speed at Chun, screaming that he killed his parents. Roshi then sees that he's made a mistake, and he removes his disguise, leaving Bruce extremely shocked and betrayed that Roshi would do this to him. However, Roshi then explains his reasoning for attacking him and tells that Bruce that he's sorry and he had no idea that this was going to hurt him, and that was never his intentions. Bruce Wayne would eventually accept the Turtle Hornet's apology, but he would then inform Roshi that it is now time for him to learn the attacks of the Crane School. Roshi would immediately disagree with this, but Bruce has already made up his mind. Roshi then tells him that this is not going to be good and not to give in to their ways. Bruce then smirks, saying that he's never going to be someone that he's not, as then Roshi asks if he could then teach him his signature Kamehameha, but Bruce then tells him that there's no need, that he already knows how to do it. Roshi would then laugh, thinking that he's joking, but no, Bruce then draws his hand back, shooting off a massive Kamehameha, as he then flies off, heading to the Crane School. Bruce then arrives at the door, where he's immediately forced to show his skills. Other Crane School members would then jump Bruce as the gates would then open. Bruce wasn't expecting this, so he wasn't doing the best against the numbers at first, but he had a move to break the distance. Bruce would then burst a Kia, then flipping the member off on his back, the side kicking the other, as he then jumps into the sky, Kamehamehaing the rest of the members. Shin, seeing this, was already more impressed than what any of his other members could do. However, he then noticed that he used the Kamehameha, so he had to train under Master Roshi, or at least had to study his work. That being said, Bruce would then have to actually fully accept him as his master, forgetting Roshi's training or whatever he learned about Roshi. Bruce Wayne, already being warned about Shin, knows his evil ways, so Bruce just plays along with it, saying that he's actually good and that he was never going to train under Roshi anyway. This is just a move that he learned on the internet. This actually plays to Shin's ego, as the training would then begin. Bruce then shows us that he's actually growing very quickly, but Master Shin actually notices that Bruce hasn't fully committed to the process yet, noting that Bruce isn't being brutal enough. In fact, Shin would even acknowledge this to Bruce, who simply replies that he hasn't had a proper opponent, and Shin hearing this, well, this actually leads him to setting up a small tournament for Bruce, as he'll face two prospects that have been training by themselves for the Crane School, and if he wins, then Shin offers a serious match against himself, and if Bruce wins that, well, then he'll end up leaving him alone, and that his training is done. Bruce doesn't hesitate, ready for the first match, who happens to be with Chaozu. Bruce, though, manages to make quick work of Chaozu, not even letting him get a move in, or using his telekinesis or anything like that, and hadn't facing neither Chaozu or Ten Shinhan, Bruce is basically at a disadvantage because both of these two have been watching Bruce. However, at this point, Bruce is easily outmaneuvering both Ten Shinhan, and Chaozu is starting to cheat and try to help Ten Shinhan, as he then actually beats Ten Shinhan easily with a Kia and knocking him out of the ring. However, when Ten Shinhan comes back at him, Bruce actually dodges it, slamming his face into the ground, knocking him out cold. This is then when Shin actually knows that he has to step in. Shin, though, at this point does have a little bit of regret, maybe even thinking that Bruce has surpassed him after seeing how fast he did beat Ten Shinhan and Chaozu. However, saying nonetheless, Bruce Wayne was also ready to see if his training with the Crane School was actually done, as he then charges at his master. Shin then blocks with a forearm, but Shin isn't dumb. He already knows that he's lost this fight, cutting Bruce off. Master Shin realizes that Bruce also hasn't changed as a person, so he gets very pissed and angry at Bruce. He then screams at Bruce, telling him to leave his dojo and to never think about coming back. Bruce, though, had no intentions of returning after getting this training, so Shin and his school served his purpose for Bruce. Bruce's quest then to train with all the great masters then would continue. Bruce, after hearing about a cat from Roshi named Korin, Bruce would then start researching him, but finds nothing about him on the internet, or nothing about him in his deep files or anything like that, so he then heads back to Roshi's island to ask more questions, plus showing Roshi his improvement that he had would be kinda nice. So Bruce Wayne sets off, flying, not just with a hovercraft or anything like that. And yes, that sounds very weird, but anyway, Bruce is probably 50 miles from Roshi Island when out of nowhere he gets nailed by a pillar. Bruce is hit out of the sky, but he quickly rose up, immediately recognizing who stood in front of him as Earth's greatest assassin, Mercenary Tao. Bruce wasn't aware of why he was being attacked, but he wasn't backing down either. Tao would then leap off one foot as Bruce watches his legs, but Tao clobbers Bruce with a left hook straight to the jaw. Tao then follows it up by stomping on Bruce's hand, kicking him square in the face. The kicks then would keep coming as Bruce then recognizes similarly to the shoe that he was wearing, and also the outfit that he was wearing as well. But this doesn't help Bruce here, because he actually gets one kick too many as he gets knocked out cold. Tao would then take a small moment before killing Bruce, which is actually what saves Bruce in the end, because Roshi would then come out of nowhere to help his former student. Tao isn't happy to see Roshi, but if Tao recalls correctly, Roshi doesn't compare to him. However, this doesn't change the fact that Roshi's mind is made up and tells Tao that it's the Turtle Hermit way, as the two would then collide. Mercenary Tao and Master Roshi were pushing each other like no other, but Tao was overpowered Roshi just by a small smidge, and this slight advantage was actually cut short when a Dodon Ray comes shooting through Tao's arm. Tao would then turn around to actually see that Bruce wasn't just done yet. By seeing the numbers advantage, though, Tao decides to flee, saying that he'll meet them again soon. Roshi and Bruce then help each other out when Bruce asks about Korin, as Roshi would then tell Bruce everything he knows about Korin, but also tells him to be careful and that Tao won't rest until a hit is complete. Bruce then vows to make sure that he's stronger, saying that nobody should feel the way that he feels right now, and nobody should feel scared to live their own lives, and that he will be the change in the world, that he will be the vengeance that Earth needs. Bruce would then leave Roshi before Roshi could even reply, but Bruce Wayne would then be heading straight to Korin's tower. Being able to fly, he doesn't really struggle getting up the tower, but Korin refuses to train him unless he climbs from the bottom, which is really Bruce's first test. Bruce then climbs from the tower with very little ease, so Korin agrees to train Bruce. Bruce's training, however, does take longer than Goku's, but doesn't take as long as Roshi's with 3 years. So we'll say that Bruce probably manages to finish the training around a month. However, Bruce notes that the water that he gets afterwards is just water. Bruce then adds to Korn, though, that he does feel much stronger and thanks Korn for his training. Bruce then, before leaving, asks Korn if there's any other training or special tasks that he could possibly do, as Korn says no, but Bruce, learning Korn over this month, calls his bluff. Korn knows that Bruce is going to be consistent unless he gets an answer, so Korn would eventually explain what the Ultra Divine Water is, as then Korn tells Bruce that there's no need to actually do it because there's no need to risk his life right now. Bruce then debates drinking the water right now, even though Korn asks him not to, and ultimately he then listens to the wise cat, and Bruce says that if it ever comes down to it, he's drinking the water. Bruce then flies off the tower, heading back to the Wayne Manor, first though stopping in at Wayne Industries, which is actually going to be Capsule Corporation in this timeline, as this then leads Bruce's company, as it's helped ran by none other than Dr. Briefs, the head scientist and inventor of, well, Wayne Industries. Bruce Wayne actually comes back to Wayne Industries actually to give a public speech about capsules that are coming to the new stores, while also checking in on business since he's been gone training for a couple of years. With that said, Dr. Brief would then run the information by Bruce, giving him all the details that he needs for his speech. Bruce Wayne is then introduced by the King of the World, King Fury, as he then states his speech until suddenly he stops in his tracks. Bruce then notices a big pillar coming straight towards him, as Bruce would then recognize this. However, he couldn't reveal that he could fly or had powers or anything like that because he had to remain normal, so he screamed, telling everyone to get out of the way, to run, and get anywhere where they can hide. The pillar then crashes down on the stage. Once everyone actually gets away, though, Bruce springs in action, jumping up, following the smoke of the crash, when he finally sees a familiar face, Mercenary Tao. Mercenary Tao explains that Bruce got lucky with their last encounter and cracks Knuckles, saying that it's not going to happen again. Bruce, though, has other plans, knowing that he's a lot stronger, just asked to move the fight somewhere else. Bruce Wayne would then tell Tao that he should have no reason in moving the fight because he has no reason of hurting the innocent here. They've done nothing wrong. Tao replies saying that it doesn't matter who gets hurt or who dies as long as he gets his money. Tao Pai Pai then charges at Bruce full speed, not expecting Bruce to actually weave and dodge his attacks. Tao, thinking that this was a fluke, he goes back for another punch, but Bruce, though, catches it, his fist, and actually tosses it back, kicking him straight in the chest. Tao now starts second-guessing himself, but he actually doesn't reveal this to Bruce. However, Bruce is fully aware that Tao is struggling, and in fact, he's struggling so bad that he starts pulling out weapons and everything that he has in his arsenal, as Bruce, though, like Goku's second fight with Tao, he has an answer for everything that Tao does. Tao at this point is desperate, as he could be, so he starts throwing off grenades at Bruce, as Bruce then catches him easily and tosses him right back towards Tao. This actually happens, and it blows up right in Tao's face, burning his skin, bleaching it as he then falls to the ground. Bruce then squats down by Tao, telling him that he took his parents, that he took his childhood, and that he won't let him take anything or anyone from any other innocent being. Tao, barely breathing, laughs, saying that he will have just that he will have the last laugh. Bruce then leaves while Tao retreats as well, as Bruce doesn't make it back to Wayne Industries though. Instead, he actually stops by a near mountain after seeing some smoke coming from it. This actually was Ox King Village. When he plants down, he finds none other than Ox King. Ox King explains that this is Fire Mountain, as he has also been struggling to extinguish this fire alone for quite some time. Also, Ox King says that he's going to need some more help, but as he goes to say more, Bruce Wayne had already disappeared, and it turns out that Bruce was at the base of the fire, where he actually attempted to use Chaos to put out the fire, but when that didn't work, he actually decides to use a Kamehameha. The blast actually manages to put out the fire, but Bruce wasn't expecting the mountain to actually come crashing down on him. Not paying attention, the mountain rocks come tumbling on him, trapping him amongst the rocks inside this cave. Bruce then realizes that he has to blast the rocks out, but facing the town, he then couldn't chance hurting anyone, so he just decides to do something else. Bruce then decides that he could just push them out with force. However, this would then cause them to come tumbling down into the town, and that defeats the purpose of what he'd been trying to do and save everyone. So with that said, Bruce would then start moving the boulders one by one. However, as he starts doing that, more and several bats are coming in and bothering Bruce, attacking his head, protecting their home while still remaining in their shadows. While Bruce is then getting himself out of this mess, he then has his mind racing. He's then thinking about everything that's going on, thinking about how he can cover himself, thinking about Wayne Industries, thinking about saving people, thinking about his parents. Everything was just racing in his head until finally it clicked. He wanted to have his fighting identity a secret or hidden in the shadows. Bruce then puts together, thanks to the bats that were swarming his head, the idea of Batman. Alright guys, that has been the end of part 1. The next part will actually introduce Batman, as well as bring in Goku and Bulma and the others, so if you guys enjoyed, make sure you smash the like button. It helps out the channel a lot. Also, comment what you want to see in part 2 and what you would actually just like to see me do in general. And also, be a cool kid. Hit that sub button as well as ding that bell if you like Dragon Ball. Discord links and Patreon links will be down in the description, as well as the amazing artist who helped out with this project, Mr. Negative. With that said, I'll be catching you guys in the next video. Dragonstar Productions is out.
Congratulations, champ. You made it to the end of the video. Now, if you hit that subscription button, that thumbs up button, and that bell icon, you won't catch a dynamite kid.